Kinetic Carl here. It is Kinetic Lab of Wonders. Lola guarding the entrance. Here we'll turn around and show you what's going on. In the Kinetic Lab of Wonders, we've got the spare tires. Well, one's underneath the machine and the other spare tire is over against the wall, but all the other wheels are on board. Let's see if I haven't spun this yet. Yeah, not bad. And then let's see, how about this back one? Yeah. So what we have here is a 10-person human-powered kinetic sculpture. Been stored away, race ready for the last 2 years. It hasn't raced. Has it been that long? Pontoons all stowed away, the float gear, all the frames and tubing. Those tubes are hidden there in the frame. And then of course these are part of the float system. But all the float hardware is stored on board right now. Underneath the main deck, all that aluminum tubing going way back that way, center of the screen. That's all float tubes and being stored in a rack. Because they're so long, the rack is underneath the main bench. Of course, here's the pilot seat. Main pilot, seats 10. Now, need to get the wheels spinning. It hasn't been pedaled or anything for a long time, so once we get her out on the pavement, she'll roll free. The fact that I can turn it by foot like that is pretty darn good, considering it hasn't even been pedaled or nothing. Everything's all lubed up. 2 years ago, we got her race ready, painted her. A little dusty right now, but there's no, I challenge anyone to find some open rust. There's pretty much blackened frame everywhere you look. Hasn't been in the bay since painting, and it's been painted twice now. You know, once for the first year of COVID, and then again just a little bit more. We painted it, or I painted it, thinking we may race this year if my surgery heals up in time. I think I would have been able to sit on the machine, probably not pedal too hard though. The kind of surgery I had, they had to do some reassembly of that region. And so my saddle bits would not probably be quite ready for that, you know, the pedaling part, but I could probably set or shift my sitting on a thigh. So there's the rear wheel. Again, seats 10 people. Oh, that's right, the water drive. You see that big silver flowery looking thing in the back? Looks like a 4-leaf clover. That is actually the the water propulsion system, and it can swing in and out of the water. It's right now kind of a little bit beyond halfway out of the water. Normally it'd go straight up, but as you can see, my garage is pretty short, so that propeller normally sticks up in the air and it looks really pretty. I like it. And when we're riding down the road and when we're in the water, it's straight down. So far it's worked flawlessly. We even went forward against a headwind and some tide action last year, or I mean the last year it raced with the water drive. It's had a variety of different propellers back there, but the water drive itself has been kind of the same mechanism for 3 years in a row. There was a time earlier when this machine just sported a big paddle wheel on the back. And I've thought about making a removable paddle wheel assembly. Paddle wheel's nice because it's really good for low or shallow water. The only problem with it is the steering with a paddle wheel is very slow, whereas with this propeller we can turn on a dime. The propeller can be raised in and out of the water, so it can still work. The shallow water, actually, we tend to drive our way across and just get little brief moments of floating. And that's the beauty of this machine, is it's it's a monster. And the pilots are nice and high up, so we can go fairly deep in on water that we don't necessarily have our pontoons out. We could still, like if there's a year where the river's almost done and we're still going across it, I think we could do it without pontoons. And that means one less transition for that third day of the race when everybody's kind of tired. And then over here, of course, this is the 1966 Barracuda. Engine compartment's all clean and ready, pretty much ready to receive the front end kit first. There is no, well, there's a bunch of stuff stored under it right now, but there is no suspension in it right now. The suspension is all right over here on a workbench, all painted up. The orange bit of tape goes away. I just used electrical tape to keep things I didn't want paint on from getting painted. And that's all the front end torsion bar, suspension, and then the paint used to spritz it black. And then I have another box of parts, a little more, the last of the parts to be prepped and beautified. Yeah, and of course the 273 Commando V8 engine, aspirated. It's got that short manifold on it. Look how short that thing is. I mean, the water neck is far taller than it. Usually the water neck is not nearly that tall in comparison to the manifold. And then of course I've got my earthquake. I live here in California. You folks out on the East Coast probably get quakes but once every gazillion years, and we get them, quite frequent. So to keep the engine stand from toppling, it's just a good old traditional kind of a small engine stand. I would say a V8, small block V8 is all you'd want to huff around in that thing. Anything bigger than this engine, it's kind of tippy, especially on this old concrete floor. This is probably 100-year-old concrete floor, or the shops are 100 years old, but concrete floor is probably 70, now that I think about it. These were originally stalls for horse and mule and stuff like that back in the day. The homes that had alleys had assumed that folks had critters for transportation. All right, well, Kinetic Carl logging out. Here it is, super secret Kinetic Lab of Wonders. Pretty soon the team will be here and we'll ride this thing someday for the glory.